from Columbia in high definition. This is WIS News 10 Awareness.
Thank you for joining us for Awareness. I'm your host, Megan Norman. This morning, we're going to touch a topic that may make you uncomfortable. We're talking about what it means for some to be black and gay in South Carolina. Last week was Black Pride in Columbia, and that was a celebration of lesbian, gay, bi, and transgendered community. It's a community that sometimes is ridiculed and sometimes it's misunderstood. Some argue their sexual orientation is compounded by race. To talk about some of these issues, we bring in Anthony Beckett, Vice President of Education and Outreach for South Carolina Black Pride, Dr. Todd Shaw, a former President of South Carolina Black Pride, and also Chesley Price with the South Carolina HIV/AIDS Council. Thank you so much for being with us this morning and talking about this topic.
Thank you for having us.
Now, in this discussion, in this conversation, some people say this is a lifestyle, this is a choice. How do you respond to that?
I don't like the term lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Why not?
Because the term lifestyle means as though it was a choice that I choose to live this way.
Right.
Mm-hmm. When really it's a way of life. It's not a lifestyle. It's a way of life, and that's what we should look more in tune with it. It's just, it's the way I choose to live.
Mm-hmm. So when did you first realize that was your true identity?
I came out in graduate school to my to friends I knew really all my life. Right. So I say that it's not a lifestyle, it's not a choice, it chose me. And I just had to align my understanding with my own choices. So as far as I know, I have always been a gay man. But I had to look back and wonder, once I got to a certain point and a certain epiphany, that this is who I am. And yes, it's going to be tough. But I'm going to align myself with who I truly am and live authentically.
Now, Anthony, how did coming out change your life?
For me, it was kind of weight lifted more so, and kind of coming into a better understanding of who I am and what it is that I want to do with my life. And the reason I say that is because I knew I was different. I knew something was different about me since childhood. A lot of the things that I did, a lot of the people I hung out with, and a lot of games that I played. But basically beyond that, the biggest thing that kind of registered with me was that, okay, something's different, but I don't know what it is. I like this, but I don't know why. But then as I got older and experienced different things and read and watched television and things like that, it's like, oh, maybe that's it. And then I didn't fully come out until I was in college, and told my parents. Of course, they didn't react the way that I wanted them to, but at the end of the day, like, our relationship is definitely thriving now because we have had those adult conversations about, what does this mean for me?
What is your identity? So
Yes.
this has been a journey of sorts.
Yes.
And talk about some of these challenges and hurdles. You mentioned one, family acceptance or tolerance, but what are some of the other issues associated specifically with being black and being gay?
Well, sometimes it's a matter that you are made to choose which community you actually have loyalty to. Right. Who do you belong to? And I say I don't make that choice. I am African American, I am gay. And I'm going to carry that with me wherever I go. Now, there's sometimes a question about whether the society knows it or thinks they know by looking at you. Sometimes they don't. I will say that I have a certain privilege in that in many instances, if I don't tell people, they don't know. If I'm not out in a setting, they don't know. And so, but be that as it may, I know who I am. And sometimes you have to make choices, in the office. And I've made these previous choices about, I'm dating someone. Do I use the gender pronoun among coworkers? Do I say they as opposed to he?
Now, making that choice, do you consider that to be hiding part of who you are?
I think so. But I think these are things that you have to navigate being black and gay. You have to always be careful, not careful, maybe that's not the right word, but you got to be mindful.
Yes. And you're constant, it's a constant thing. It's you got to know when to be appropriate. Mm-hmm. You have to feel out, not just you have to feel out the people you come in contact with, the people you meet in your social circles, the people you meet at church, the people you meet on your job. because some of them are less tolerant than others. So you have to kind of maneuver them. It's a two-ness. We call it dual identity, being black and being gay, having to deal with both issues on my job, when I go to church, where I go to eat, my friends I'm around. Are they acceptable? It's a whole lot. It's a whole gamut of things.
Well, do you think tolerance is growing in the black community and then in the community as a whole? Or where do you feel more tolerance?
I hate to say this. One of the things I did as a child, I had to make some choice. I was attending one of the local black high schools, and I chose to leave to go to a predominantly white high school. And I did that because I felt as though I could hide amongst the white population. And when it comes to making the choice to go to college, I decided to go to a predominantly white college as opposed to a black college when I really wanted to be around my people. But I could hide. I could go on that campus and hide amongst the whites. And they were more tolerant, I hate to say that, and more acceptable than those of my black counterparts, my black people.
And just to kind of add to that, it's fluctuating, especially in my current generation and then those coming behind, because it's still interesting and it's very much so prevalent as well that homophobia is a taught behavior. A taught behavior, a learned behavior. And a lot of that also kind of instills that fear to come out and be true to who you are and to accept exactly who you are. And I say that because, of course, being in South Carolina, because I'm not originally from South Carolina, I'm from Maryland, so coming back to South Carolina for undergraduate and then also living and working here now, it's an interesting experience. Depending on the circle that I keep and the individuals that I'm interacting with, their thought process and their reaction to certain things. Sometimes they're not very receptive to, same gender couples out in public, showing public displays of affection. Sometimes it's more so a very hidden lifestyle for some reason. You
talk about that homophobia, and I think sometimes, in some cases, homophobia can breed the hate.
Yes.
And you talk about South Carolina, but it's all over, really.
Right.
In Detroit, for their Black Pride, we have some video of that where a young man was assaulted. He was beaten up.
Right.
So obviously, it's not just a regional thing, but it's nationwide. So do you think, well, has that happened at any of the Black Prides that you've been a part of?
Thankfully, no.
No.
We don't have any problems like that. And I don't see it ever coming to that because honestly, I feel that there is a respect, there's an understanding, but it's enough time for understanding. We need equality, we need the same rights, we need the same privileges as everyone else. So I firmly feel that, like, yes, there's a tolerance, there's an understanding to an extent, but there's no full acceptance of the LGBT community.
Okay, well, we are just getting started here, so just stick around with us. When we come back, we're going to be talking about sexuality and religion. Welcome back to Awareness. Faith is a major cornerstone for many people. Some could argue that religion and spirituality are part of a lifestyle extending far beyond just a belief, but dictating actions and leading people down certain paths. To talk about how religion factors into this discussion, let's bring in Reverend Adam China of Adams Northeast AME Church. Thank you for joining our conversation this morning.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, what do you preach? What does your church believe in when it comes to sexuality and homosexuality?
Well, I can say the denomination in which I serve, we do not condone same-sex relationships because they're in direct, we believe they're in direct violation of God's word, or they directly contradict God's word. Now, I do believe at the same time that while personally I don't agree with it, I don't necessarily think I'm in a position to judge. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people have to learn in the church, in particular, is that we can disagree, but we don't necessarily, I don't think we can judge because in God's eyes, sin is sin. Right. And I think all of us have our own sins. I think Paul said all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So I think that while we can disagree, we shouldn't necessarily try to judge. You understand what I'm saying? Right. And I think that in many cases we tend to run more people away from the church as opposed to bringing them in, because we can come and I can sit down with you in dialogue and we can disagree, but we don't have to necessarily hate each other, and we can't demonize those who don't necessarily we don't see eye to eye with.
Right. And because some parishioners, or many of them, believe that if you are homosexual, then you are committing a sin. Who you are, your lifestyle is sinful. Anthony, Todd, how do you reconcile that? First of all, do you believe in God? Do you have a faith?
Most definitely. I'm a Christian man, born and raised in the church, and attend more than one church now, and very much have wrestled with my own faith. Faith has always been very important to me. My father and my mother have given me that as a cornerstone, and I love them for that. I believe very much so, however, that I asked, what would Jesus do, and what did Jesus say? What did Jesus preach on this question? And I won't get far into the text, but after doing my own study, after thinking about it, and after wrestling with the book, I've decided that that first commandment, that first commandment with regards to love God and then love thy neighbor, are those two cornerstone commandments that we all have to live by. And so I appreciate very much the Reverend's viewpoint. I don't agree that it's a sin, but I do believe that we as people of faith have the right to disagree but still be a body of faith. And that's what's very important.
I can personally also attest that I too believe in God. I don't really claim a religion. I'm more in tune with my spirituality, my own personal relationship with God. From my own past experiences from childhood, growing up in a church where the pastor animately came out and said, I don't like homosexuals. So it's like, how can you truly preach the word of God when you have already a negative bias? How can you understand an individual that's coming to you needing help, needing spiritual salvation, spiritual assistance, but you can't get past, oh, well, this is a homosexual. You're running people away. And then time and time again, I encounter a lot of people that have either given up on God, and when I say people, I'm talking about the LGBT community, have given up on God, don't go to church, don't believe in church. And it's just like, whoa.
Do you think it's more so because of the parishioners, or it's because of just
It's
what?
more so the parishioner, and then also beyond that, just their own personal experiences, because I'm not the only one that's experienced a church that basically ostracized them or cast them out because they were gay. At the end of the day, I am who I am. I understand my relationship with God. And just as Todd has said, and even as Reverend China had said, at the end of the day, we can disagree. We're all adults. We're all people of this world. We can coexist. You don't have to like everything I do. I don't like everything that you do. So I find it a little bothersome to see that it's such a big issue, because it's like you guys are, there's such a strong attack on the LGBT community, but there is domestic violence still going on. There's still gun violence going on. There's drug use. There's so much that's going on, but it's like it's such a strong attack on my community, and I'm like, but why?
Right. Well, Reverend China, do you think that people use religion as an excuse for intolerance, or use it as an excuse to hate?
Well, I do. I really do. And again, I mean, I love the Lord, and I love my faith. I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of my faith. But at the same time, and I look, and I think Dr. Shaw referenced the Bible. I think about Jesus with his conversation in John chapter 4 with the woman at the well. When he talked to her, he didn't beat her up for who she was. Mm-hmm. He met her where she was, and they had a great dialogue. Mm-hmm. And I think that in the church as a whole, one of the things we need to do is not necessarily we have to agree. We don't have to, endorse it, but at the same time, we don't have to demonize, folks either.
So then how do we find that common ground, though? Because it seems like we've been struggling with that for a very long time.
To be honest with you, I don't know that we ever will, to be honest with you. I mean, you can hope, and I think that conversations like this, I think that's a good start to it. But the problem is, as a community, a lot of people are not willing to have that conversation. I think one of the other things, and I personally, this has been something, I guess a thing with me, is the word homophobia. And I think that I do believe homophobia exists by all means. But I think, for myself and many others, we're not necessarily I think a lot of people tend to believe that if you don't embrace it or accept it, then you are homophobic. And to have a phobia, to my understanding, is, to fear something, or, I don't fear, I just don't agree with it. Right. And again, and I can respect you. I mean, I don't have to accept your lifestyle or say that, I'm okay with it, but I still can think that you're a wonderful person. In my secular career for many years, I worked with several people who were in same-sex relationships. I mean, I enjoyed sitting down talking to them. We laughed, we talked, they were nice people. I just didn't necessarily agree with their sexual preference.
Right.
But at the end of the day, that was between them and their God to answer to. And I figure I have my own issues that I need the Lord to work with me with, so I don't have time to beat up on anybody
And so
else.
for you, it's about not condemning, not judging, but learning how to live together.
Live together. And again, and one of the things, and the church I'm privileged to serve, I always tell them now, you know, I don't believe in beating anybody up from the pulpit. I don't believe that. But at the same time, if we come upon a passage of scripture that's in the Bible, I'm not going to dance around it either. You know, I'm not going to pretend that it's not there in order to make you feel good. You know, but at the same time, I'm not going to seek you out just to beat you up with the word either.
Right. And if someone wanted to come and join your church who was gay, would you embrace them and have them be a part of your congregation?
I think the church, and maybe I'm sure you all have heard the phrase, come as you are. And we can't say, we say all are welcome, whosoever will let him come. We can't say whosoever will let him come except you or accept you. I mean, because the reality is if you go by that, then who's really worthy of coming to church, any church? You know, so again, it's not, you know, I mean, I think these are two wonderful brothers. I may not necessarily agree with their lifestyle, but I mean, what's to say that they can't come to church? You know, why not?
Right, very true. Well, thank you all so much for being with us. I know we just broached the topic, many different topics this morning, but I do appreciate your contribution today.
Thank you.
When we come back, prevention and education, the efforts behind HIV and AIDS awareness. One million people are living with HIV right here in the United States. South Carolina ranks 8th in the nation in the rate of new AIDS cases each year. The CDC actually considers South Carolina one of the top 10 hotspots for the disease in the nation. Joining us now is Chesley Price, once again with the SC HIV AIDS Council. Thanks again for being here.
How you doing?
Now, some people, there's a misconception out there that HIV and AIDS, it's a gay man's disease. Talk a little bit about this myth.
Well, first I want to say there is a high occurrences of HIV amongst the, we call it MSM community, men who have sex with men community. But also, South Carolina has been leading the nation for the last 5 years. HIV been passed from man to woman. We were number 1. I think this year we've made a stride. We've moved to number 4 or 5. I don't like to get in the stats, but I know there is a high occurrence of HIV amongst the heterosexual population. 49%, I think it's 49% in 40% in this state. HIV is being passed between man and woman.
Now, what is the council doing in terms of prevention and education? Because it obviously is a very serious topic.
Well, like I said, the South Carolina HIV/AIDS Council has several programs. One is one of the programs is for men who have sex with men, young men who have sex with men. It's called 3MV, Many Men, Many Voices, and it deals with building self-esteem amongst these young men. It deals with dealing with self-efficacy. It deals with being self-identified. That's for HIV negative individuals. But really what it does overall, there's a term called preparation for bias. It prepares these young men for that dual role, being black and being gay. You know, when we were young, our mothers would say to us, you gotta be twice as good. You gotta do twice the job in order to be recognized. So this is the way we approach the young men. This is what you have to do. And hopefully, by using this approach, we can help lower the occurrences of HIV amongst that population. We also have, on the other hand, for those young men who test positive for HIV, we have an intervention called Healthy Relationships. South Carolina has a law in place that if you're HIV positive, you must notify whoever you're going to bed with. If you don't, you can be
break the law.
Right, you break the law. So what we deal with in this intervention, we deal with disclosure to partners. How do I disclose to my partner that I'm HIV positive? How do you disclose to your family members that if you're HIV positive?
Now, you're talking about men with men, but I mean, do you also encompass other people in the conversation?
Oh yeah, we have
heterosexual.
I've done I do safety counts. That's for people who are in the active role of addiction. People who are doing meth, people who are doing crack, people who are drinking alcohol. And we go in there and we show them how they can reduce their risk of acquiring or transmitting HIV or other sexually transmitted infections. I go on to college communities. We do Voices, which is a video outcome. It's a monitoring. We reduce their risk through, they watch a movie, we discuss it later, and we help reduce their risk of acquiring or transmitting STDs.
Well, of course, part of disclosing your status is knowing your status, so of course it's very important to know your status and to get tested. So we'll have a link to the SC HIV AIDS Council website on our Facebook page. We'll be right back with the final thought. The purpose of this morning's discussion was to make you think and to perhaps give you a different perspective. It was not to sway you in one direction or the other. Maybe it secured your beliefs, or maybe it made you reevaluate. We all come from different families with different beliefs and different priorities, but we all have to find ways to work together, regardless of personal differences. It does not mean you need to embrace or associate with what you disagree with, but it also does not mean you have the right to condemn. We were not put on this earth to be perfect, but we were put here to live together. We would like to thank all of our guests this morning. Until next time, I'm Megan Norman. This is Awareness.